The first impact cracked the ridge like a thunderclap, sending fragments of dark rock cascading down the slope. Lieutenant Mason Hale pressed his back against the jagged stone and waited for the next barrage. The alien drones never missed twice. A second burst scorched the air above him, vaporizing the basalt crest where Sergeant Dwyer had taken cover moments earlier. Dwyer didn't scream. There wasn't time for that anymore. Hale forced himself not to look, his jaw tightening as he scanned the horizon through his cracked visor. The enemy's targeting optics swept the valley in rhythmic arcs, beams slicing through the dust like searching eyes. He counted 3 drones, each hovering low over the crater field where their transport had gone down. Their rotors hummed with a mechanical pitch that grated against his nerves. The SEALs had landed under heavy fire 40 minutes ago. Now only 4 of them were still breathing. The rest were gone, scattered across the black terrain like discarded armor. Status. Hale muttered into his throat mic, though the static nearly swallowed the word. Out of charges, replied Petty Officer Marcus Reed, crouched 10 meters away, clutching the barrel of his carbine, like it might vanish if he loosened his grip. Comms are dead. No satellite lock. Corporal Hayes limped past, dragging a wounded teammate by the harness. Extraction's a bust. The relay station fried every beacon we had. His voice cracked under the weight of exhaustion. We're blind out here, Lieutenant. Hale didn't argue. He'd seen the dropship's vapor trail spiral into the cliffs minutes after touchdown. Command had underestimated the defenses on Kryn 47. The mission had been simple in planning. Insert, plant a demolition charge on the alien relay, and exfil before the main force noticed. Nothing about it had gone right. The planet's sulfur sky now glowed with distant explosions from Earth's retreating fleet, and the ridges echoed with the metallic screech of hunting drones. He pulled his sidearm and checked the chamber out of habit, though he already knew the count. 2 magazines left. Enough for a fight, not for survival. We move east, he said. There's cover in the ravine. If we stay on this ridge, we're dead. They moved in pairs, stepping over shards of armor that had once belonged to their squad. The terrain was treacherous, thin dust layered over glassy stone, every step sliding a fraction too far. Reed stumbled and caught himself on a rock, leaving streaks of blood across the surface. Hale ignored his own limp. Pain was secondary now. Command decisions were all that kept anyone alive. Think Command even knows we're still kicking? Reed asked, half to himself. Doesn't matter, Hale said. We know. The air shimmered from heat and radiation. He could smell the ozone in every breath, the metallic tang that reminded him of electrical burns. He'd fought on 3 worlds before this one, but Kryn had a way of making a man feel like the last human alive. They reached the ravine just as the next drone swept past overhead. Hale signaled for silence and pressed his hand to the rock wall. He could feel the vibration of engines through the stone, a deep mechanical heartbeat. Then it stopped. The hum shifted pitch, dropping lower, search pattern narrowing. One of the drones was triangulating movement. Reed mouthed, they know. Spread. Hale whispered, but the word came too late. A streak of blue energy slammed into the ridge above them, showering molten debris down the slope. Hayes threw himself over the wounded man he'd been carrying. The blast concussion rolled through the ravine, deafening and absolute. When Hale's hearing returned, it came in pieces, first the ringing, then Reed's ragged breathing, then the slow crackle of burning rock. Everyone sound off, Hale demanded, but only Reed answered. The others didn't move. The lieutenant's chest tightened. They'd come in 12 strong. Now, too. He leaned against the wall and looked skyward through the drifting dust. The drones hovered like vultures, their sensor lights cutting slow, deliberate circles. We're out of time, he said quietly. Reed nodded, jaw trembling. We could hole up in one of the caverns. Wait until dark. There's no dark here, Hale replied. Kryn's twin suns never set, just dimmed to a dull amber. We find high ground. Make them pay for every inch. The younger man hesitated, then nodded again. It wasn't agreement. It was surrender to the only logic that made sense. They began climbing toward a ridge line that overlooked the valley. The ascent was brutal, each meter contested by unstable footing and falling debris. Hale moved first, pulling Reed up behind him. He didn't think about the others left below. Thinking meant slowing down, and slowing down meant dying. Halfway up, he paused. Something caught his eye on the far side of the valley. A glint, faint but unmistakable. It wasn't drone metal. It was steady, deliberate, human. A shot rang out. The sound was unlike the shriek of alien weaponry. It was sharp, percussive, familiar. A kinetic round tore through the nearest drone's chassis, splitting it open in a burst of sparks. The machine spiraled downward, smashing into the rocks below. Hale and Reed froze, staring across the valley. Another shot. The second drone collapsed mid-turn, wings folding inward before crashing into the dust. The third fled upward, engines wailing, but it didn't escape far. The third shot dropped it clean. 3 shots. 3 kills. Hale blinked hard, disbelief warring with instinct. That wasn't automated, he said. Reed's mouth fell open. No way. Nobody else made it off the drop. Somebody did, Hale muttered. His voice felt heavier now, rough with the sudden rush of adrenaline and confusion. Whoever was out there had just saved their lives. He keyed his comm again, more out of habit than hope. This is Lieutenant Hale, Echo 9 Actual. Identify. Static answered, long and broken, but for the first time since they'd crashed, wasn't dead silence. He could almost make out a human voice buried in the interference, a fragment, faint but real. Hold position. Then it was gone. Reed exhaled shakily. Did you hear that? I heard enough. Hale studied the ridge opposite theirs, the smoke still curling from the fallen drones. There, barely visible through the haze, was movement, a silhouette prone against the rock, rifle steady, scanning for more targets. Whoever it was, they were disciplined, calculated, human. For the first time since the mission went sideways, Hale felt something dangerously close to hope. He checked his rifle, slapped a new magazine into place, and looked at Reed. We're not alone after all. The wind shifted, carrying the distant echo of another gunshot somewhere beyond the ridge. Hale turned toward the sound, squinting through the heat distortion. The figure had vanished. Let's move, he ordered. Reed hesitated. You think it's one of ours? Hale started up the ridge again, not looking back. Doesn't matter who it is, he said, as long as they keep shooting at the right things. The 2 men climbed in silence, the valley behind them littered with smoldering wrecks. Above, the twin suns dipped toward the horizon, staining the sky with streaks of copper light. Somewhere ahead, beyond the haze and ruin, a sniper waited. Hale didn't know her name yet. He only knew one thing for certain. The mission wasn't over. Hale and Cruz lay motionless beneath the shattered ridge, her cheek pressed against the rifle's cold frame, breath shallow and timed to the rhythm of the wind. Through her cracked scope, the valley below shimmered with heat distortion, the metallic ruins of the enemy drones still smoldering where her rounds had found them. She adjusted her aim slightly, scanning for movement, but only dust stirred in the sunlight. 3 shots, 3 kills. Not bad for a weapon patched together from scavenged parts and stubborn willpower. She shifted her weight, wincing as pain flared through her ribs. The crash had left her with a hairline fracture and a limp, but that had been 4 days ago, long enough for the pain to become background noise. Long enough to learn that surviving wasn't enough. She needed purpose, and the ridge gave her that. She'd stayed hidden here, observing, waiting for the right moment to rejoin the fight. When she'd spotted the flicker of human armor in the valley, her pulse had spiked. She thought she was the last one alive. Cruz tapped her helmet, cycling through frequencies. The static was constant like rain on glass. She tried again. Echo 9, this is Shade. Respond. Her call sign, faint but familiar, hung unanswered in the void. Then, barely audible, a human voice broke through Hale's. The tone was unmistakable, clipped and calm, even under pressure. She exhaled in disbelief. So he made it. If he was alive, then maybe command hadn't abandoned them after all. She slung the rifle and crawled backward, careful not to silhouette herself against the skyline. The ridge was a patchwork of jagged basalt and broken alien plating, remnants of an old battle that predated humanity's arrival on Krynn. The metal hummed faintly when touched, like it still remembered the energy that forged it. Cruz didn't care why it glowed or what the scientists back home would say about reactive alloys. She cared that it provided cover and reflected thermal scans. She ducked into the crevice that served as her shelter. Inside, her supplies were laid out with surgical precision. A half-empty water pouch, 3 magazines, a ration bar, a torn photo folded so many times the edges had worn thin. It showed the team, Hale, Dwyer, Reed, Hayes, and herself, standing beside their dropship on Luna Base before the mission. They looked younger then, full of the kind of confidence that comes from believing you're unbreakable. She traced Hale's face with her thumb, then folded the photo and slipped it back into her pocket. Sentiment was dangerous, but it kept her sane. A faint tremor vibrated through the stone beneath her. She froze, listening. The sound was deliberate. Footsteps. Too heavy for drones, too cautious for animals. Human. She peered through the slit in the rock and caught a glimpse of movement near the valley floor. 2 figures, moving low and quick, weapons ready. Her heart jolted. Hale and Reed. She almost called out, but instinct overruled emotion. If she could see them, so could the enemy. Cruz crawled out and repositioned her rifle, sighting along the slope above the 2 men. She spotted the glint of alien optics farther up the ridge, scout drones, small and fast, sweeping in wide arcs. The aliens were adapting, triangulating where the earlier shots had come from. She steadied her breathing, adjusted for crosswind, and fired once. The nearest drone erupted in sparks. Another veered off, signaling the others. Cruz fired again, her modified rifle kicking against her shoulder. The weapon was built from human steel and alien energy cores, a Frankenstein hybrid that shouldn't have worked, but did because she refused to let it fail. She spoke softly into the mic again, timing her words between shots. Echo 9, if you can hear me, follow the ridge north. You've got 5 minutes before they regroup. Static. Then Hale's voice, faint but firm. Copy that, Shade. Good to hear your voice. The sound almost undid her. She bit down on the surge of emotion, forcing herself back into focus. You too, sir. Move fast. She watched them adjust their path, hugging the rock line and disappearing into the shadows. A flicker of pride warmed her chest. Hale had always been steady, even when everything else fell apart. That steadiness had kept them alive on Europa and Titan, places where panic killed faster than bullets. She'd followed him because he never ordered without reason, never wasted lives for protocol's sake. The ridge trembled again. A deeper vibration this time, something larger approaching. Cruz shifted her scope and spotted an alien crawler cresting the opposite slope. It moved like a tank with legs, 6 jointed limbs grinding through the stone. Mounted plasma turrets rotated methodically, scanning. They were hunting her. She exhaled through her nose, forcing calm. Fear was energy. Energy had to be controlled. She adjusted her position, dragging herself farther back along the ridge, using the terrain to mask her heat signature. Every motion had a count. The crawler halted, its turrets sweeping in a synchronized arc. Then abruptly it fired. A bolt of energy scorched the ridge not 10 meters from her position, showering her with molten rock. She rolled to her side, shielding her visor. The blast left her ears ringing, but her mind remained sharp. She needed distance. She grabbed her rifle and pack, crawling downward along a narrow ledge until she found another vantage point. The air smelled like ozone and burnt metal. Below, Hale and Reed were still moving, small figures against an endless wasteland. She took aim at the crawler's sensor array and squeezed the trigger. The bullet hit dead center, punching through the glowing eye. The machine staggered, one leg collapsing beneath it, then toppled sideways into the valley. A muted cheer crackled through her earpiece. Reed, she realized. He must have seen the explosion. She smiled despite herself. Still breathing down there? She asked. Hale's voice came through clearer now, the interference fading as the alien relay's local field weakened. We're alive. That your handiwork. Affirmative. Damn good shooting. Cruz glanced at the smoke rising from the wreck. You trained me. A brief silence followed, heavy with the kind of mutual understanding that didn't need words. Then Hale said, We're heading for the high ridge. Meet us halfway if you can. Copy. She packed quickly, slinging her gear and sliding down the slope. Every muscle protested, but adrenaline kept her steady. The terrain leveled briefly before rising again toward the ridge where the SEALs were headed. She could see faint heat signatures on her visor overlay. Friendlies closing in, aliens circling behind them. Cruz crouched behind a rock, reloaded, and opened fire on the advancing shapes. Each shot found its mark. She didn't think about the distance or the odds. She thought about the mission, about Hale's voice cutting through the static, about the simple truth that she wasn't dead yet, and that meant the fight wasn't over. By the time she reached the ridge's midpoint, her arms trembled from exertion. She spotted Hale first, waving her forward, Reed close behind. For a moment, all the exhaustion dissolved. She allowed herself a rare grin as she climbed the last few meters. When she crested the rise, Hale met her halfway. He looked older than she remembered, grime streaking his armor, but his eyes were the same steady gray. Thought you bought it in the crash, he said. Guess I'm harder to kill than they thought. Reed laughed once, sharp and disbelieving. Shade, you're a damn ghost. Not yet, she replied. The wind howled over the ridge, carrying the smell of scorched metal. They turned together to face the horizon, where distant figures moved through the haze. The enemy hadn't given up. Cruz chambered around and glanced at Hale. What's the play, sir? He studied the valley below, expression unreadable. We take the ridge. Make it ours. Cruz nodded, settling beside him, rifle steady once more. The fight wasn't done, but for the first time in days, she wasn't alone. The ridge shuddered under the distant roar of artillery, dust rising like smoke from the fractured ground. Hale crouched behind a boulder and surveyed the valley through his visor. The alien formation was reforming. Sleek infantry units moving in coordinated phalanxes while drone clusters hovered above them like metal hornets. The momentary lull bought by Cruz's precision had ended. Their position was no longer a secret. They had drawn blood, and the enemy was responding in kind. Cruz lay prone a few meters away, her rifle trained downrange, the faint hum of its hybrid core vibrating through the rock. Her face was calm, almost detached, but Hale could read the exhaustion beneath her eyes. He'd seen that same look reflected in his team countless times before. Soldiers running on grit and instinct, aware that every breath might be their last, but unwilling to surrender it cheaply. How many rounds left? Hale asked quietly. 8. Cruz replied without looking up. 2 mags if I strip the partials. You. 5 for the rifle, 2 for the sidearm. Reed's got less. Reed adjusted his helmet, crouched near the fallen crawler. I've got plenty of curses left if that counts. His attempt at humor was hollow, but it earned the smallest hint of a smile from Cruz. Hale appreciated it. Morale mattered as much as ammunition now. A metallic screech echoed across the ridge, followed by the rhythmic thud of heavy footsteps. Hale turned toward the sound, and his stomach tightened. The enemy was deploying walkers, 2 of them, each twice the height of human, their exoskeletal limbs glinting beneath the twin suns. Mounted cannons swiveled toward the ridge, tracking movement within human precision. We can't stay here, Reed muttered. No, Hale said, we fight here. He pointed toward the collapsed crawler wreck below. We use that for cover. Shade, take high position on the ledge and focus on the command nodes, the things glowing blue on the walkers' backs. Reed and I will draw fire. Cruz hesitated for only a breath. That's suicide, sir. Only if you miss, Hale said. She nodded once and crawled toward the upper slope, moving with practiced efficiency despite her limp. Hale and Reed sprinted downhill, kicking up dust as plasma bolts scorched the ground around them. One blast struck close enough to throw Reed sideways, his armor flaring with melted edges. Hale pulled him behind the wreck and checked for movement. The younger man gritted his teeth, clutching his shoulder. Still functional, Reed gasped. Then keep your head down. Hale fired his last rifle rounds at the approaching infantry, more to disrupt than destroy. Blue sparks flared where the bullets struck alien armor, but most rounds bounced harmlessly. These soldiers weren't fragile like drones. They adapted. Hale ducked back just as a return shot gouged a glowing crater into the metal hull beside him. Above, Cruz adjusted her scope. Her view was steady despite the thunder of gunfire below. She slowed her breathing, lining up the nearest walker's command node, a glowing crystalline structure pulsing in rhythm with the machine's movements. She exhaled and squeezed the trigger. The first shot hit low, glancing off armor. She adjusted, fired again. The bullet punched through, and the walker convulsed. A burst of blue light erupted from its joints before the entire machine collapsed in a tangle of limbs. One down, she murmured. Good shot, Hale said, voice taut over comms. Second walkers shifting right. The remaining walker pivoted, firing a salvo that shattered the upper ridge. Cruz rolled sideways, narrowly avoiding the blast. The concussion sent her tumbling down a few meters, scraping her forearm raw, but she held onto her rifle. The air was thick with heat and grit. She blinked through the haze, found the machine again, and noticed something new, a figure atop it, humanoid but larger, encased in armor that shimmered with liquid metal. Commander Tarek Voss. She'd read the name in mission briefs before deployment. An alien tactician known for leading from the front, his body augmented with neural tech that blurred the line between soldier and machine. If he was here personally, this wasn't just retaliation. It was extermination. Voss raised an arm, and the walker's turrets adjusted instantly, targeting her position. Cruz ducked behind a rock, heart pounding. Hale's voice crackled in her ear. Talk to me, Shade. He's here, she whispered. Voss. On the second walker. There was a pause, then Hale's steady reply. Then we end it here. He turned to Reed, whose face had gone pale beneath the visor. We need a distraction. EMP grenades, short range, timed. Reed fumbled through his pack, pulling out 2 devices. We only got these because you ignored the supply manifest, he said weakly. Guess my paranoia paid off. Hale grinned, though the expression didn't reach his eyes. On my mark. He sprinted from cover, zigzagging between rocks as plasma bolts tore through the air. Reed followed, throwing the first grenade at the walker's feet. It exploded in a pulse of white light, distorting the air. The walker staggered, circuits flickering. Hale reached its base, vaulted onto a jutting ledge, and climbed. Each movement was pure instinct now. Calculated, efficient, desperate. Cruz steadied her rifle again. Voss turned toward Hale, raising a wrist cannon that began to glow. She had 1 shot, maybe 2, before he fired. Her breath slowed. The world narrowed to the reticle in her scope and the faint pulse of her heartbeat. She fired. The round hit Voss's shoulder, spinning him sideways. He fired wildly, his blast scorching the rocks meters from Hale, but missing its mark. Hale reached the top and slammed his final grenade into the walker's vent system. Now, he shouted, dropping back as it detonated. The explosion tore through the machine's frame, sending shards of molten metal into the air. Voss was thrown free, crashing onto the rocks below. The walker collapsed beside him, its massive limbs folding inward like a dying animal. Hale hit the ground hard, the impact rattling his armor. Cruz scrambled down from the ridge to meet him, sliding the last few meters. Voss rose unsteadily, his armor cracked but functional. Blue light leaked from beneath the plates where the grenade had scorched his systems. He looked almost human for a moment, expression twisted not in rage, but in something close to respect. You fight like a species that refuses to die, he said, voice translated through static. Hale raised his pistol, out of rounds but unwilling to lower it. You figured that out too late. Cruz lifted her rifle, sighting center mass. Voss straightened, defiant even in defeat. This world will consume you, he said. Your endurance means nothing against inevitability. Maybe, Hale replied, but it means something today. Cruz fired. The bullet struck Voss through the chest, and the light behind his visor dimmed. He fell silently, armor cooling to ash. For a long moment, none of them spoke. The ridge was quiet except for the crackle of burning wrecks. Reed limped up from the valley, grinning despite the smoke. "That was insane," he said. "You realize Command's never going to believe this." Hale holstered his empty pistol and surveyed the horizon. "They don't have to. We're still alive." Cruz sank against a rock, muscles trembling from exhaustion. "For now," she said. He glanced at her. "You doubt me, Chief." She shook her head faintly. "Not you, sir. Just the universe's sense of humor." A faint rumble echoed in the distance. Ships breaking atmosphere. Maybe reinforcements, maybe something worse. Hale didn't know. What mattered was that they'd survived the impossible again. He looked toward the burning wreckage of Voss's command unit, then at Cruz. "We hold this ridge until extraction," he said. Cruz reloaded her rifle, a slow smile forming despite the fatigue. "Wouldn't have it any other way." The wind picked up, carrying the metallic scent of victory and ruin. Above them, the sky shimmered with distant flashes from the orbital battle still raging. Hale adjusted his visor, scanning for a beacon signal. For now, the ridge was theirs, but somewhere beyond the haze, the war continued. Dawn came slowly to Kryn, 47, if dawn could even be called that. The twin suns bled pale gold through the dust-thick air, washing the ridge in muted light. The battlefield below lay silent, a graveyard of alien metal and blackened stone. Smoke still coiled upward from the wreck of the second walker, drifting lazily into the copper sky. Lieutenant Mason Hale stood at the ridge's edge, helmet off, feeling the wind bite his skin. The air was sour with ozone, yet it carried something clean beneath the scorched tang, a reminder that he was still breathing. Behind him, Reed worked over the comm relay they had scavenged from the crawler's wreck. Sparks leapt each time he twisted the wires. "Signal strength's weak," Reed muttered, "but I think I can piggyback off the crawler's array. If the fleet's still out there, they'll hear us." Cruz sat cross-legged beside a rock, cleaning her rifle with mechanical focus. The barrel was scored black from the last shot that had ended Voss. She ran a rag over the metal, slow and deliberate, as though erasing the memory. "If the fleet's still out there," she repeated softly. "They are," Hale said. "They have to be." He didn't believe it as much as he wanted to. He'd seen the retreat from orbit, the blinding streaks of human ships pulling back under alien fire. But Cruz didn't need his doubt. She needed direction, and he could still give her that. Leadership, he had learned long ago, was often the act of believing for others when you couldn't for yourself. Reed cursed under his breath and slapped the relay's casing. "Got something." The screen flickered to life, displaying faint telemetry, scrambled, weak, but unmistakably human. "It's a distress beacon, 30 clicks south. Automated, probably from one of our downbirds." Hale stepped closer. "Can it transmit?" "Barely, but if I rig a pulse through the alien array, it might reach orbit. The power core's unstable, though. It'll blow after one burst." Cruz set down her rifle and stood, brushing dust from her armor. "Then we make that burst count." They began moving quickly. Reed adjusted the frequency modulation while Cruz carried the core's coupling, its glow pulsing faintly through the cracks. Hale checked their perimeter every few minutes, scanning the valley for movement. The quiet was unsettling. The aliens had retreated after Voss's fall, but he knew better than to trust silence. The enemy didn't rest. They recalculated. As Reed worked, Cruz watched the horizon. The suns climbed higher, heat waves rippling through the valley. She could feel fatigue settling deep in her muscles, the kind that no amount of rest could fix. Yet she couldn't look away from the wreckage below, the smoldering machines, the scarred earth, the reminder of what they had done. "You ever think," she said quietly, "that maybe we weren't meant to win here? That command sent us to die, buying time for something else." Hale paused beside her. "I've thought it," he admitted, "but I stopped caring. Doesn't change the job." Cruz gave a short, humorless laugh. "Still following orders, even when there's no one left to give them." "Somebody has to keep the line straight," Hale said. "Otherwise, we're just ghosts." Reed looked up from his work. "Power's stable for now. Once I hit transmit, we'll have 10 seconds before the core burns out. Then do it, Hale said. Reed hesitated. We might light ourselves up doing this. If there's anything left out there hunting, they'll see it. Hale looked at Cruz, then at the smoking horizon. Let them see. Maybe it'll remind them humans don't go quietly. Reed swallowed and flipped the switch. The relay flared to life, a bright lance of light shooting skyward. The air shimmered with static. Cruz shielded her eyes as the pulse built to a shriek. The ground trembled beneath their feet, and then, with a sound like a thunderclap, the device overloaded. The light vanished, leaving only the hum of wind and the faint crackle of dying circuitry. For a long moment, none of them spoke. The silence pressed heavy on their chests. Then Cruz's calm crackled, weak, intermittent, but real. Echo 9, this is Fleet Command. Do you read? Coordinates, verified beacon. The signal fractured into static, then reformed. Extraction inbound. Hold position. Reed hooped, punching the air. They heard us. Hale exhaled slowly, a tight smile ghosting across his face. Told you they'd still be out there. Cruz lowered her hand from her ear, a faint tremor running through her fingers. Extraction, she murmured, almost in disbelief. After all this time, Hale turned toward the horizon where the suns burned bright. After all this time, he repeated. The victory felt fragile, a small flame in the cold. He knew the fleet might not even be the same command they'd left. For all he knew, Kryn, 47 was already marked for abandonment. But the promise of rescue was enough. It meant their fight mattered. Hours passed as they waited, tension suspended between them like wire. Reed scavenged parts for flares, while Cruz recalibrated her rifle one last time. Hale paced the ridge, replaying every decision, every loss. Dwyer, Hayes, the others, they'd bought this moment with their lives. He owed them more than survival. He owed them meaning. The sound came first, a distant hum that built into a low, resonant roar. Hale turned toward the west and saw the dropship cutting through the haze, its engines kicking up waves of dust. The ship was scorched and battered, paint stripped from its hull, but it was human. That was all that mattered. Reed waved his arms, igniting a flare. Over here, Echo 9 survivors. Cruz smiled, small and genuine. Didn't think I'd ever see one of those again. The dropship descended in a swirl of dust and light. As it settled, Hale felt a strange heaviness lift from his chest. He turned to Cruz. You first. She shook her head. You're the ranking officer. Not arguing. Move. She hesitated, then stepped toward the ramp. The heat from the engines rippled against her armor, the noise deafening. She paused halfway and looked back at him. You know, she said over the roar, I wasn't sure we'd make it. Not after the crash. You did, Hale said. That's what matters. Her eyes softened. No, sir. We did. He nodded once, words unnecessary. Together, they climbed aboard. Reed followed, collapsing onto a seat with a sigh that sounded half relief, half disbelief. The hatch sealed behind them, muting the wind outside. As the ship lifted, Hale looked through the viewport at the ridge shrinking below. It was nothing more than scorched rock and shattered metal now. But to him, it was sacred ground. The place they'd proved humanity's stubborn heart still beat strong. The fleet might retreat, planets might burn, but as long as even one human refused to bow, the species endured. Cruz sat beside him, head tilted back against the bulkhead, eyes closed. Where do you think they'll send us next? She asked. Somewhere worse, Hale said. She smiled faintly. Figures. Reed chuckled weakly from across the cabin. At least they'll have to invent new metals for this one. Hale didn't answer. He watched the ridge disappear beneath clouds of ash, and for the first time since the mission began, he allowed himself to breathe without counting the cost. The comm buzzed again, Fleet Command confirming coordinates, promising debrief, med-evac, rearmament. The war was far from over, but the tone carried something he hadn't heard in a long time, pride. As the dropship climbed higher, the light shifted from gold to white. Below, Kryn, 47 stretched out endless and broken, the scars of battle fading into distance. Cruz opened her eyes and followed his gaze. You think anyone will ever come back here? Hale thought of the ridge, the fallen, the impossible odds. Maybe, he said, but not for war. Someday, maybe they'll come back to remember. She nodded. The hum of the engines filled the quiet between them. Outside, the suns rose higher, burning through the haze, turning the valley into a field of light. The ridge, their ridge, shone faintly in the distance, marked by the twisted remains of alien steel and a single glint of human armor. They had been left for dead, but the universe, Hale decided, would remember differently.